Good morning, everyone. We will be gathering for a few minutes here, so please come on in. If you wish, you can introduce yourself in the chat, or you can just enjoy the presentation, and we will be using the chat for questions as well throughout the presentation and at the end, so please feel free to get that ready. And I think we will wait another couple of minutes before we get started. Welcome, everyone. I will wait another minute or so, but thank you so much for joining us today. We will get started here in a minute. In the meanwhile, if you feel like you can introduce yourself in the chat, and we will be using the chat for communication, and you can also unmute yourself during the Q&A. Okay, well, I'm going to get started to give us plenty of time for discussion at the end. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Borshika Rabin, and I'm going to be leading today's informational webinar with help from Jordan Crawford, our center coordinator, program coordinator. And unfortunately, Dr. Stutz, who is the director of the program, will not be able to join us today due to a family medical emergency, but she will be available via email for any follow-up questions. So we will be recording this webinar, just so that you know that. We will make this available on our website, which is, Jordan is going to make it available in the chat. This is on the Accords D&I program website specific to the certificate. And so the Q&A and the actual slides and the video recording will be available for you after the session, and others will also access it, just so that you know that. Today's session is meant to give you an opportunity to learn about the Accords D&I Graduate Science Certificate Program on Dissemination and Implementation Science. We are going to go through some key logistical and content components of this program and encourage you to ask questions. And hopefully we will get you ready, if you are interested in applying, to apply for the program. We'll give you some guidance on how to apply, some deadlines, and also some useful links. So that's our main goal here. Jordan, we can go to the next slide.
You are sharing your screen, Borshika.
Oh, I'm sorry. We changed our plans. We were indicating first that Jordan would share. So here we are. So the program has collaboration with the Clinical Sciences Graduate Program at the University of Colorado. And we have wonderful partners in Lisa Secuto and Galit Mankin, who are have been working with us over the past several years, making this program successful. In terms of our Accord side, we have 3 key leaders in this program. The director is Dr. Tina Stutz. I am serving as a co-director, and Jordan Crawford is the program coordinator for this. And the two of us are here today to answer your questions. In addition to us, of course, we have an incredible faculty that makes this program possible. We are very excited that we have been able to retain and expand our faculty. These individuals are extremely dedicated to share knowledge about dissemination and implementation science and make you successful. They are also really excellent and leaders in the field of dissemination and implementation science. I'm going to list these individuals. I'm also going to check if any of our faculty is here. Feel free to unmute yourself. I'm looking around and I don't think anyone was able to join today, but I will go through very briefly. Many of you are familiar with Dr. Russ Glasgow. He is the creator of the REAIM and PRISM frameworks, which we commonly use in implementation science. He is also a PI of one of only 6 centers awarded by NIH for implementation science centers in cancer control, and the lead of our Accords DNI program, along with Dr. Jody Holtrap. Dr. Holtrap is a professor and vice chair for research in family medicine, the co-director of Accords DNI, and a former DNI senior advisor for the HRQ. We have Dr. Monica Hoyes Perez. She's an expert in health equity and also community engagement and participatory research. You might have read her work in Functions and Forms, which is really an exciting direction that many of our colleagues have been going. Dr. Bethany Kwan, she's an associate professor and associate vice chair of research in the Department of Emergency Medicine, an investigator and education program director. And then also she has a key role in the dissemination and implementation work at the Colorado Clinical and Translational Science Institute. Dr. Russ Brunson, the director of the St. Louis Prevention Research Center and co-director of Washington University's Implementation Science for Cancer Center, as well as the co-editor of the gold standard DNI textbook on DNI research in health. And then Dr. Alison Hamilton, who is a chief officer of implementation and policy at the VA Center for Study of Healthcare Innovation, Implementation and Policy, as well as has a query-funded center. And then Dr. Katie Trinkley, she's an associate professor now with the Department of Family Medicine and also Accords. Excellent work in co-creation as well as health system change and learning health system. Dr. Meredith Ford, she is in the School of Public Health at the University of Colorado with extensive global work in health equity and engagement. And then Dr. Amy Hipschman, who used to be the director of the certificate program and is an associate professor and clinician, a wonderful implementation scientist working in different chronic disease areas and also methodologies for implementation science. So we are very excited to offer this faculty for the program, and we are constantly bringing in also TAs, which are very highly qualified TAs, often graduates from this program who are themselves published implementation scientists. So the current presentation is set up to answer key questions around what, who, why, where, when, and how related to this program. Very briefly, I'm going to provide a little bit of background on dissemination and implementation science. For those of you who might be newer to this field, then we will talk a little bit about who should pursue the DNI Science Certificate, why to do this, and where our certificate course is held. And when should you apply and how? So we will be very pragmatic today and a little bit less academic. So in terms of providing a definition, we find it helpful to talk about what we mean by dissemination and implementation research. These two definitions are emerging from the NIH program announcement. They are defining dissemination research as the scientific study of targeted distribution of information and intervention materials to a specific public health or clinical practice audience. And I like to kind of think about it as how best to package, communicate about, and deliver evidence-based interventions. And in implementation research, which is actually something that is much more frequently done than dissemination research, is the scientific study of the use of strategies to adopt and integrate evidence-based health interventions into clinical and community settings to improve individual outcomes and benefit population health. And to translate that to a question is how best to support the uptake, integration, and sustained use of evidence-based interventions. Many of you came to this webinar because you are already doing some work in implementation science, and you might be actually frustrated by this 17-year gap and 14% of the evidence of research being implemented only. But we also know that there is hope. And when we use active D&I approaches, at least a few studies were able to show that we can substantially speed up our implementation, and we can actually increase the amount of evidence that is being implemented. Some studies indicated that the implementation or dissemination time can be decreased from 17 years to as low as 3 years. And we can perhaps go up from 14% to as high as 80% when we are thoughtful and intentional in how we create and implement programs. And so the essence of this program is to think about these numbers in a very meaningful way and think about strategies that can improve our research to get closer to the 80% and 3 years than the 14% and 17 years. And many of you are familiar with this leaking pipeline as well, that just represents these same numbers in a visual way. Most of the individuals who talk about dissemination, implementation, science, or research thinks about the T3, T4 components of the T1, T4 continuum that is identified for clinical translational research. We believe that there are opportunities in earlier translational steps to improve our dissemination and implementation potential. So in our courses, we do talk about ways that you can design content so that you create higher dissemination and implementation potential down in the end zone. And so we are really open to discuss earlier stage research as well and think about how dissemination and implementation concepts might apply for those. So why did we create the D&I certificate program? We created it because we really realized it was in 2018 when we started to work on it. It was first launched in 2019. And we realized that there was tremendous local and national need for rigorous training for D&I science, both in health services and public health research. There are a number of wonderful national institutes that provide training. Ours is, we will talk a little bit about, different in that it takes a little bit longer. You have a little bit more traditional academic work, but we also spend more time with you in the long run, and we provide a lot of handholding and mentoring throughout this program. We wanted to also leverage the outstanding D&I faculty that we had on campus at CU, and then also connect with our other national D&I leaders as guest lecturers or course leaders for our program. And that component actually grew. So we have more and more individuals from outside who are coming in and teaching the program. Our educational philosophy has not changed since we started the program. We wanted to create a program that is useful for those who are already doing some research or QI work in their discipline, and they want some tailored content that will give them the academic credential or competencies that they need to incorporate implementation science into their research or QI work, but then also provide personal attention, individualized attainment of D&I competencies in relatively small class sizes. We are trying to keep the classes to up to 15. We recently had a couple of classes where we had 18 students, but in that case, we brought in 2 graduates from the certificate program as TAs. So you got 4 instructors teaching these 18, 19 students and providing feedback on their work. We also, as I mentioned, try to balance the theoretical learning and the applied learning. So we provide didactic information, but we ask you to apply that immediately and ideally to actual work that you are doing in your own job. So we are not creating a lot of busy work. We are trying to keep you advance your own career as you are in the program. We are using a competency-based curriculum, which means that we are looking at the PEDAC and colleagues article, and then we actually have a more updated version of the competencies led by Amy Hipschman and Russ Brunson and others. So we are linking these D&I competencies, and this is just a selection here, to the program. Each course identifies the different competencies they address. There are overlaps as well, so we are reinforcing and increasing you from basic to more advanced competency in these areas. A few might include the use of D&I theories, models, and frameworks, and then designing pragmatic interventions and evaluation, using appropriate measures to assess implementation and effectiveness outcomes, the balance between adaptations and fidelity, using mixed methods, and then also engaging partners, different kinds of partners in a meaningful way. And then we are more and more focused around health equity across all of the courses. For you to complete the certificate, you need to gain a total of 12 credit hours. And generally, it takes about 3 years to do that. Some individuals were able to do it more rapidly by taking multiple courses, but many of you are actually working full-time jobs and doing other types of important clinical work or research work, teaching. So they choose about 3 years to complete the certificate. There are 3 required courses that are adding up to 8 credit hours. And I will talk briefly about each course that are listed here. And these are offered, fall, spring, and fall. We ask you to start with the introductory course for dissemination and implementation research in health. And then the order you can choose in terms of the designing for mixed methods and then the design for dissemination, although it makes a lot of sense for you to go in this order that I show on the screen here. And then we have elective courses that you can choose from. You will have to pick about 4 credit hours for those. And there are a number of those that you can pick from. They are offered at different times to make it easy for you to get through the program in a timeline that works for you. And in addition to the 3 courses that we have offered within the certificate, we can also approve some electives. They will have to come from CU because this is a CU approved graduate certificate program, but there are some others that we can offer to you, including some independent study work that we have done with students. So very briefly about the courses, the Introduction to Dissemination and Implementation Research in Health is co-taught by Dr. Stutz and myself. We have been co-teaching this for the past, I think, 3 or 4 years. You will see that we use a lot of co-teaching approach in these courses, and most of the time the instructors are there for all courses. So you get a lot of good interaction between the students and the instructors. In this course, we are focusing on the basics of implementation science. We are getting you ready for more advanced courses. We are talking about models, methods, and measures. We are going to talk a little bit about how to build a D&I grant or QI grant or project proposal. And you are actually going to work on one throughout the course of the semester. We like you to bring your own project for this. So perhaps you already have something that you are working on for submission, because then it becomes really meaningful to you. And we are doing a lot of interaction again within the classes. We do some didactic teaching, but there is a lot of back and forth sharing by the students of their own experiences. Most of our courses, we require that you have your cameras on and be ready to learn. These are online, but all synchronous courses. And so you will be interacting with other students. So we require that you reserve your time for these courses exclusively. The second required course is our Advanced Methods course, Designs and Mixed Methods, which is taught by Dr. Alison Hamilton and Dr. Meredith Fort this spring. And they are going to dig into in-depth examination of study designs. They will talk about qual, quant, and mixed methods. And they will also complete D&I method sections for a research proposal, getting really into the weeds. So really thinking about those nuanced components that in the intro class we didn't get to. The third required course is Designing for Dissemination and Sustainability. And all these required courses have been around since the beginning of the certificate. Currently, it is taught by Dr. Bethany Kwan and Dr. Monica Hoyes Perez. And this course is focused on design think processes, co-designing, meaningful engagement, and also this idea of planning for dissemination, implementation, and sustainment from the beginning. And so there is a lot of work thinking through, if you are in an early stage, pre-implementation, you are creating an intervention, what can you do to increase your potential to be successful? We have a number of electives that we created specific for this program. The one that I really enjoy because I co-teach it is the Context and Adaptation in Dissemination and Implementation Research. We co-teach this with Dr. Stutz, and we are talking a lot about how to consider multi-level context, how you create alignment between your dynamically changing context and the program. And we also think about, health equity in this course. The other course that is very, very popular, and no wonder it is co-led by Dr. Glasgow and Dr. Brunson, and they are actually working on grant writing. So the previous courses worked on certain components of a grant. This course is really a capstone of refining your grant, getting into each section and thinking through and getting feedback on how to sharpen it before you submit the grant. There are mock study sections happening as final exam, and it's a very hands-on course offered during the summer. And then we have an advanced research topics in DNI science course, which I also actually really love. This is digging into the literature. We read a lot across all of our courses. We get you up to date on the DNI science literature, but this course allows you to engage in in-depth journal club discussions around most recent topics and allow you to present on these topics. So it hones in your presentation skills. You receive peer critique on presentation as well, and it gets you really understand what are the new areas and directions in DNI science. So what do students think of the DNI courses that we offer? First of all, I will say that we have a really diverse student body in terms of their background, their research interest, their training in terms of whether they come in with a training in specifically public health services research, very clinically oriented trainings, QI background, etc. But you can see that we get some really positive feedback because students feel that they were able to apply what they learned in the class to their work, and they are successful in getting publications and proposals funded. And so you can see a couple of quotes here. I will read them. I spent the last 13 years evaluating effectiveness in pragmatic intervention trials. Through that process, I learned a great deal about the challenges of implementation, particularly when grant funding ends. The Dissemination and Implementation Certificate Program is developing my skill set in incorporating implementation and dissemination science into all phases of intervention, development, and evaluation. And Dr. Wagner actually is someone who has been doing implementation science work in some ways, but she's currently receiving this more kind of formal training through this program. And then another individual who, Dr. Barnaby, who is an MD trained researcher. I'm taking this class because I have discovered that creating predictive models is the easy part. Implementing them and understanding where they can provide value is the real challenge. And then I will just share a couple of more. I will not read all of them, just highlight that throughout the program, while it's not a requirement, often what happens is that students start to interact with each other and collaborate, as well as instructors collaborate with students. So we have a number of publications and proposals funded where individuals who were part of the program were successfully competing together and starting to work together. And that happens within the CU system and outside. So the target audience really or priority audience, I should say, for the DNI certificate are researchers interested in conducting the T3, T4 translational research with a focus on the dissemination and implementation of evidence-based programs, with the caveat that we are reaching out to the T1, T2 stages as well, and we are thinking about how to incorporate DNI there. And then we are also interested in including professionals in health services, community health, and public health research. The different career stages that individuals come into the program might be key awardees. That seems like a natural stage when you are working on some professional development to incorporate DNI throughout your career development award. Often this program is written into the career development award. In some cases, it's mid-career faculty who want to become a homegrown local faculty expert in DNI research in their institution. We have had a number of faculty from different institutions around the country and internationally come because they don't have local expertise in DNI, and they are interested in being that expert. We have PhD and DRPH students who have been using this as a minor concentration in research methods. And then individuals who are interested in exploring areas for a PhD test out a field of DNI science before committing to a research in this area could be in great position to apply. As I mentioned earlier, but just want to make it very clear, this is a fully virtual program available completely online, but it's mostly synchronous. So we are meeting synchronously using Zoom platform and allowing remote participation from locations across the US and outside of the US. We have some Canadian students as well. The only barrier could be the time zones. If you are in Europe or other parts of the world, we are expecting you to be at the class, and we have not had that problem so far, but that could be considered. Our academic home, as I mentioned earlier, is we are collaborating with the Clinical Science Graduate Program, which is part of the Colorado Clinical and Sciences Institute. So this is a formal graduate certificate program, and your courses will be applied to graduate degrees at CU. So if you are in a clinical science program, master's or PhD, you can apply these courses to your PhD and master's program. There are some caveats there, and we can get to those. So how would you apply? There are some key admission requirements. So everyone who is applying need to have bachelor's degree by the time of the program start. And we require at least 3.0 GPA. We don't have any prerequisite courses. There is a link provided here. And I think that, because I don't see the chat, but I think that Jordan is dropping this link into the chat. This is the place where you would go for all the information. Everything else I will share is available at that link. All the details about what documentations you need to have, international applicant information, the application cycle, deadlines, etc. So if you can't keep up with my very fast talking here today, you have this information written down. So again, I already mentioned the prerequisites and the requirements for admission. In terms of required application documents, you have to complete a CU Anschutz online graduate school application. It includes a statement of interest as well, 250-word limit, and we ask you two questions. What makes you interested in specialized training in D&I science, and what do you hope to gain professionally from the D&I certificate program? We ask for a CV or a resume. We need transcripts from your highest completed degree, and the MD applicant has to also submit undergraduate degree transcript. Statement of how program will fit into current responsibilities with an optional letter of support from your current supervisor, indicating that you will have some protected time to complete the program. And then there is an application fee, which is $50 for domestic applicants. We have international students who participated in the program. There are some unique requirements for them. I'm not going to get into this, but I'm happy to come back here and we can provide you with additional guidance as well. And then there is a little bit more here, again, about the specific steps in application. The website is the starting point. There is a link to the application, which is, again, on the graduate school website. You are going to be under CU Anschutz non-degree student, under non-degree graduate studies, and it's a certificate and it's an online program. So the steps, if you follow these, you will find the appropriate application form. The option will be only starting to be listed January 15. So that's when we will open up the application, and you can apply between January 15 and February 15. If you have questions about accessing the correct application form, Galit, who I mentioned earlier, is a great person to contact for assistance. In terms of the tuition, we are charging the tuition that is defined by the MS Clinical Science program, which is the 2023-2024 academic year was for Colorado residents $560 per credit hour, and for non-residents $1,361 per credit hour. This amount changes about $20–30 a year, but I cannot guarantee the exact amount. But this is generally the amount that you will be looking at. And again, we have to complete 12 credit hours for the full certificate, and you are able to do that over about 2 to 3 years. And University of Colorado faculty members will have to discuss a little bit about eligibility in terms of tuition assistance if they are an eligible employee, and we can get more information on that. So this is actually, I apologize, we will have to change that for fall 2024 certificate cohort. The application is available again, January 15. The due date is February 15. And we will give you response by late March, early April, whether you were admitted into the program. And you will be notified via email. And the courses will begin in late August 2024. So we are on a semester schedule with CU, and the course starts generally last week of August, and then goes through the beginning of December. And then there is another semester starting in January, late January. So we want to make sure that you know that this program is, of course, not only the leaders of the actual certificate program and the faculty, but important administrative support is provided by primary sponsor being the Accords program. The director and the lead CFO are listed here. The Accords DNS certificate faculty was shared, and I can't mention frequently enough Jordan's name, who has been an incredible member of our team, helping us administer the program. And then, of course, the secondary sponsor being the CCTSI at CU with the individuals who I mentioned. And then Amanda has not been mentioned yet. She's another excellent supporter of the program and helps with registering for courses, etc. And then the University of Colorado Graduate School. And I think that that's all we have. So I got through relatively efficiently. We have plenty of time for discussion. If you need to contact us, please use these email addresses. General program questions can go to Dr. Stutz, and then application-specific questions to Galit. And then again, more information about the certificate is available at this short link. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and see whether we have any questions coming in.
Borshika, there are some questions that I'll cover here. Would you be able to talk about kind of what is the expected time commitment throughout a week, normal course load? How much time are students spending on the certificate program?
Thank you so much. This is a great question, and I think it's very important to consider this because we are trying to teach you a lot of great content in a short period of time. So I can say that each course will be a little bit different, and I will speak to the ones that I am leading, but I can tell you that each course will require your time outside of classroom as well. The actual classes for the courses I lead are an hour and a half a week. And so they go full semester, so about 15 weeks. You are going to be coming to class an hour and a half. As I mentioned, it's expected from you to be there, to have your camera on. So it has to be a kind of an engaged, exclusive presence where you can truly engage with the students and the instructor and the content. Outside of the classroom, we have weekly assignments generally. The biggest one that people spend a lot of time on is reading. We do assign a number of articles or chapters for you to read, and then we ask you to provide reflections on those. And then you are also going to work on some of those proposal-related improvements as you are learning things in the class. So for the intro class, it means that you have 5 different assignments throughout the semester, which is basically different parts of a proposal that you will be submitting, getting feedback on, and improving. Depending on where you are with your development of your proposal, you might be actually getting feedback on already developed content that you just improved based on what you learned in the class, or you are creating de novo content, and then it will depend on how much time you spend on that specific exercise. I would say that an additional 2 to 3 hours a week could happen. There could be less or more depending on, again, where you are at and the course time.
Thank you. I'm going to pair 2 other questions that I briefly answered in the chat, but I wanted to get your feedback on. The possibility or process for auditing a class or not applying to the program and trying to take a course, and then situations where you might be a CU employee, someone who is part of the university, and what that process might look like, how it might differ from someone who's not affiliated with CU.
Thank you so much. So in terms of auditing, because we try to keep the classes very small, as I mentioned, it's very intentional because there is better interaction. We have not been able to allow for auditing these courses. We have limited seats for the courses through the clinical sciences students. So some clinical sciences students were able to get into these courses as a second priority level, and we try to reserve a couple of seats. So that was one way for someone to experience this program without committing to the full certificate, but it's not super easy to get in because of the high demand. We are thinking about other ways to make more access to at least the intro course, but it has not been figured out. We did do a trial webinar, kind of a 2-day workshop this past fall, which allowed individuals from CU and outside to come in and learn about DNI. But in terms of the classes, we have limited seats. Comparing CU employees to non-CU employees, I am at UCSD now. I'm not at CU. I am remaining with the program because I was starting it with others and then continue to work here. So I will also kind of rely on Jordan on this, but we do have some opportunities to, the application is different in that you have already an account most likely within the CU system, so you can go through that. Someone who has not developed an account yet, they will have to register first. In terms of payments, that's where I don't know if there were any changes, Jordan, but I think that we are accepting still the employee discount or kind of free tuition opportunity. Is that correct?
Yeah, so if you are a CU employee, you are eligible for tuition waivers. They do cap out the credits per academic year. So you would just want to plan your schedule accordingly if you wanted to do it all on the waiver. And then that's done with the graduate school side of administrative processes.
Thank you.
I think those were the big ones from the chat, so we invite any other questions. One quick one I'll touch on too, what time are classes usually held? I did drop a link into the chat from the graduate school about general course schedule. I would say from my experience, typically they're, and Borshka, correct me or add on, anywhere from 9 in the morning, I think is the earliest I've seen, through 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Schedule depending, and those might change year to year. The link I put in the chat has this last academic year. And typically they stay pretty standard there, I believe.
Yeah, so this is about, I'm sorry, I was reading the chat as well. This is about class times, right?
Class time,
okay,
yeah.
Perfect. So yes, so we have played around with this because we are thinking about people logging in from East Coast to West Coast. We are thinking about we are not able to think about, Europe or other continents, but at least we have been thinking of that. We are also thinking about our colleagues who are working clinically. And so we have done courses when we started at 7 a.m. For Colorado, so mountain time, to allow for clinicians to work before their shift, etc. No one liked that. So I have done that for 2 years, actually. My intro course, I was sitting here in California at 6 a.m. teaching the course, and it sounded like even our clinical colleagues didn't want that early. So we actually moved into more of the normal day. We provide you with the dates ahead of time. So hopefully if you are clinically working, you are able to take that day of time off and you are able to plan ahead. And for those of you who are academically also teaching or doing other kinds of things, hopefully that advanced notice allow you to plan, but we are trying to stay within that normal work hours. So it's often overlapping with other activities.
And we have a question from Tristan Hall. How many students do we accept into the program?
Oh, Jordan, do you remember? Because I didn't look it up. Last year we took, so the intro course is the kind of the bottleneck, right? We are trying not to go above this 15. We went up to 18 this past year because we had some students coming back from leave. So that's kind of our bottleneck. So that's kind of this 15 to 18 is what we have been accepting into the program. Each year, again, it's often less than the applicant number. We are pretty competitive program because we just seem to get really amazing applicants, but we are trying to get a smaller number in so we can continue to have that small group feel for you.
Yeah, I would agree with the 12 to 15. I think is typically that range. And then Rachel Kenny put a question in the chat about how much time or the maximum amount of time can a student take to complete the program, which I think you touched on briefly in your presentation.
Yes, so we are asking the 3 year is our kind of a standard time. You can take a semester off. You cannot take 2 consecutive semesters off. And so we have had students who had to sit out 1 semester, but then came back the next semester, perhaps have taken an independent study course because that was a little bit more on their timeline to complete. But the 3 year is what we recommend. We can have discussions with you, but that's kind of our goal. Again, shorter is possible. We have had students who breeze through a little bit faster. Additional fees. I'm seeing a question. Jordan, I will jump in just, you have already responded to additional fees. Okay, so we don't have to get to that. Do we have the syllabi available, Jordan, online for the different courses, or we have not provided yet?
The syllabi are not posted online. We could certainly facilitate a conversation between the instructors and getting what's previously been taught, sometimes being subject to changing a little bit.
Yes, so if someone reaches out to specific instructors, we have been very flexible about providing the syllabus so you can have a look at it, with the caveat that if it's a little bit before the semester start, we might make changes, but you can get a general sense. And I think it would be an interesting discussion, Jordan, to think about providing them online as well, because I don't know, that I think that there are different aspects to that, but definitely reach out if you have a question. Any other questions? And please feel free to unmute yourself. It's a friendly group, so you are welcome to ask your question live.
There is a new one in the chat. Do you recommend someone applies to this program after they're already working in the field, or if they're at PhD student level? When is the best timing in your perspective?
That is a great question. I think that it depends. If you are in your PhD program and you have some research ideas in mind already, then you will enjoy it, I think, especially if you want to incorporate D&I into your research. The only thing that is making the experience better is if you have your own research ideas, and so you can apply those in the classes instead of coming up with fictitious projects and spending time on doing those. That will not happen. But most students who are in the PhD program or a little bit more advanced stage have a research project that they want to work on and can align it with the program requirements. And then it becomes really more of a helper, not an additional burden on the student.
I'm going to put into the chat a list of our current graduates, and there's also program graduates, if you would be interested in checking out who they are and where they're coming from as well.
That's great, thank you. So what are the main criteria in the application considered for admissions? That's another excellent question. We would like to see the fit. It's, you will learn it in the program if you come in, that we are very big on thinking about fit between the program and the context. In this case, it's the fit between the student and the program, because we want you to be successful. So what we are looking at is this certificate going to make you more successful in the work that you are doing or planning to do in your career? And we will know that from reading your personal statement and why you think this program will be helpful. So you can very explicitly tell us how this is going to fit. It will tell us from knowing that you actually have time to dedicate to this program. So it's not going to be on top of 200 things that you are already doing without any protected time that you can carve out, because then it's going to be a suffering for you and potentially for the instructors as well at some point, the drag on. And we will look at, so that's kind of, I would say, the primary. We do look at some prior publications. So do you have skills in writing papers? Do you have skills in potentially writing grants? It doesn't have to be a D&I grant. Of course, if someone has a career development award that is being funded and it has a D&I component, that's a great thing, but that's not all of our students. that can be a really great fit, because then we are actually working with you on that career development award and getting you successful. So those are some key considerations we are looking at. And so those are things that you want to highlight in your application. I see another question about being first year in the career award. That I would say that this is the perfect time to apply, because you could hopefully incorporate the D&I training as part of your career development training component. And then also, hopefully, your research includes some D&I components. And as you are going through the certificate, it would help you incorporate those methods, models, and strategies into the work that you are doing. Yes, thank you so much. So the question from Jennifer is whether students ever end up collaborating with faculty or each other, writing grants, papers, launch studies, and networking and collaboration might come from participation. Absolutely, yes. In fact, Jordan and I just talked about to invite one of our recent graduates to present on a paper that has another currently faculty, previously student undergraduate certificate, and myself as co-authors. So definitely we have different types of collaborations between students and between faculty and students, both in terms of papers and also grants. And the small class size really allows for getting to know your peers. We also do coffee hours, coffee talks every semester. So you have another space where we do a article discussion and we connect with others from across different cohorts of the program. So we have seen wonderful networking opportunities occur.
I would add on to that and say even with some of the courses, Dr. Hupschman's specifically also collaborates with the D&I program. They'll do journal clubs that way. And some of the graduates have gone on to join the regular D&I program meetings. So I've seen them join the program more aside from just a certificate as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, that we are bringing you into the folds of the D&I program that is really a wonderful program at CU, led by Dr. Glasgow, and this allow for you to get to know some of the other faculty who are not in the certificate. Any other questions, thoughts? And through the chat, I think, Jordan, you did an amazing job picking up all the questions we had. Well, I would say that we are going to make the recording available, the slides available. Again, perhaps, Jordan, we can drop in one more, although you have put in there. No, let's drop in one more time our main link to the D&I certificate website. That's your main source for information. Feel free to reach out and connect with us, and we look forward to your application if you think this would be a good fit, and hopefully we will get to work together. Thank you so much for your attention and being here, and happy 2024.